let's now kind of start from scratch. I wanna just remake this, and that way you can kind of see step by step how I did everything. Okay, so here we've got a blank file, and we're gonna rebuild it. And one thing I want to say about this video is that I'm literally starting from scratch here. I don't have any scripts. I haven't memorized any of this stuff. So you're gonna see the real process and how I go about doing these things. And I think that's important to learn because everybody runs into these problems. And like, I have a coding background. I've got years of experience doing this. I'm an engineer, but I don't memorize this stuff. Like, nobody can remember all of these little things. So I think it's probably better for you if you just see exactly how it is. So we might stumble a little bit at times here, but that's all part of the process. Okay, first thing I want to talk about is developer tools. So if you go into Excel and you look at options, and hopefully remember how to do this. Customize ribbon. Okay, yeah, so let's see, it should be here somewhere, developer. Okay, yeah, so here's what you're going to want to do is look for this box. You're going to want to make sure you check that box. If it's not over here, it might be over here, in which case you're going to want to select it and then click add, and that should shift it over into your live environment, and then you can click OK. Okay, so now we are back over here. Your developer tab should be showing now, and this is important for a couple of reasons. This is going to now enable all of the macro development and Visual Basic Code environment, so you can actually start doing the coding. This is where you do the coding within Excel. This isn't within like individual cells, individual equations. That's not what this is. What this is code that actually will execute, and it can do, a lot of stuff, and you can spend months learning all of the different things you can do. But essentially anything that you can manually do in Excel, you can do through code and through a macro. Okay, so you don't want to do everything, but there are some things if you find you're repeating, and this is really kind of why I'm showing this, is I want you to learn kind of the overall how this works, because you'll probably think of a million other things you could do. Like anything that you're repeating, like even if you're like in other videos, we're going to get into sorting data, and this is great for that because you can actually tell Excel through a macro, through code, to search for specific things and delete empty rows or group and categorize. You kind of already saw that here. So there, in terms of like cleaning up data, it's great for that. And we'll get more into that in another video as well. But for now, that's just what we're doing here. So let's go ahead and click on this. So if you click Visual Basic, actually what this is doing is bringing up my other file in the background here. So in a way, this is good. You're already seeing, this is the existing code that is running in that other file I showed you, the finished one. And that's a weird quirk about Excel. Like if you've got any Excel file open and you do this, it's going to bring up everything. You can see like this is the new one. That's set there, and then this is the supplier management tool that you see here, and it just popped it open. So anyway, like weird thing of Excel, but there you go. In a way, it's good because let's go through it first, and we can see what we have, and this is essentially what we're going to be recreating. So this is actually going to be great because if you've got the file, hopefully you can open it up and watch the video and kind of go line by line and understand it a little bit better. Another thing that the AI systems like Grok or whatever are great at doing is explaining code. So like what you could also do is just literally copy it and paste it into your chat and just say, explain this to me, like line by line or section by section, and it'll do everything. And what's great about that is you have more questions, just ask them. So like AI is great about that kind of thing. But like fundamentally what I want to do is just kind of go through why I did things the way I did, or why AI did it and why it's structured. So okay, this is summary by category. So this is the one where it's actually categorizing the number of suppliers we have and listing the quantity per category. Okay, so when you click that button, this is the code that runs in the background. All of this here, these are variables. This is what you might be assigning data to. And that's useful for the code. You'll see it later. So essentially you're saying dimension this variable as a worksheet. This is another worksheet. Okay, so these might be like, the separate tabs that are created. Or it's probably what it is variables to go to this specific sheet and pull the data. and then store that as this variable. Last row is a variable as a long, which just means it's a numeric. Essentially, why this matters is because certain data can only be stored certain ways. And again, this is getting into some of the basic things, so you can always skip past this if you know this stuff. But for those that don't, things that are just text typically have to get stored as what's called a string, and that's so the program knows that it's letters and words, not numbers. And things that are numbers have to get categorized as longs, or there are other types. Integers. Integers means no decimals, and the reason why that's important is because of the space, the amount of storage it takes to store it. So something that has more decimal points takes more storage to actually store that in a variable and use it. And it might not matter, but if you're running 100,000 lines of analysis, all of a sudden this stuff does matter, because your programs will start to bog down, and it can take 10 minutes versus 10 seconds. So just these are some of the things that you'll run into as you go more through it. But long, again, means a number. Range means that's an actual, it's going to expect a range, and that makes it easier to sort through it. So anyway, let's get into this. So first what we're doing is we're setting WS1 as this workbook. So what that means is this one that's active, which is the one that you're in, and then sheet 1. So basically we're pulling all the information in sheet 1 and storing it here. And then we're creating an object here, which is essentially formatting that data that we just stored so that we can go through it a little bit easier. Okay, so okay, another thing here, it's useful to put comments in your code. That's what this is here. This is not code that runs. It does nothing other than, for humans or anybody that's looking at it, it helps explain what's going on in this section. And you can see here, first, what we're doing is we're checking if a sheet 2 exists, and if it doesn't exist, then create a new one. And why this is important is because if you have a sheet 2 already and you don't want to overwrite it, then what you could do is set up different code where you're adding data and you're not overwriting the existing data. So that's going to be useful historically in the future if you're trying to just add more and more results instead of just wiping out everything that you had. You could do a check like this. And essentially what this is doing is saying, if there isn't a sheet 2, then basically skip it and start, create one. And actually what this does is it does actually clear the data that's in there. So even if there is a sheet 2, it's going to wipe everything out. It's either going to create it or wipe it clean. And for us, for this purposes, that's fine. You may not want that. Okay, so the next thing we're doing is we're doing a find last row in sheet 1. So why this is important is in any document, okay, you've got a certain amount of rows. And what you don't want to do is write code that just analyzes all the rows, because how does it know where to stop? And this is actually pretty tricky, because you've got to tell it when to stop, but the data sets that you're importing might be different every time. So you might think, okay, when you see this word in this cell of this row, that's the end. Okay, but then you put a different data set in, maybe from the next month, and it's got other suppliers in there that are actually below it. But because you wrote your code that way, it's going to cut it off here. Okay, so a way to get around that is to do this, and basically there's already a set function within Excel, so all you have to do is use this feature where this part of the code will return the row number that is the last row that has data in it. And so why that's important is now you know the exact range of data in that sheet so that you can run a full analysis on it, and only that, stop there. Because if you just write it to evaluate every row, essentially what will happen is it'll just die, it'll get stuck, because it's trying to evaluate every row, including the rows that don't have data in it, which can be infinite, or however many rows Excel can actually have in it. I'm not sure what that number is, but it's huge. So it could literally just go through a million rows, even the ones that don't have data in it, and try to evaluate it. That's what you don't want. You only want it executing on the rows that you have. And if you do that, it'll run pretty quickly. And that's important because like you might have to do it several times. Like the first run might be deleting the information you don't need. Okay, the next run you go through all the rows again, and this time you're saying delete the duplicates. Okay, things like that. So you might have to cycle through a couple of times. Then the third one might be, reorganize them a certain way. So that's why you really want to lock in on just that set so that you can do it quickly and then filter and clean the data exactly how you want it. Okay, so here's an important thing. We're building a dictionary for categories. We're skipping empty rows. So anything that has this, which means empty. And the way we're doing that is we're using a for loop. And again, this is critical because we're going only over that range that we just determined. Okay, so I equals 2. I equals 2 because the first row is header information. It's not actual data. So now we're setting a new variable from I. This is the variable we're going to use to cycle through each individual row, okay? Because after the for loop, it'll do it again, but on the next one. And I'll show you that. But we're starting at 2, and we're going to the last row, so that last row number that we just found. Then what we're doing is we're pulling the value, and we're saying this is another weird, like if it doesn't equal empty, which means if it has information in it, then what we're going to do with that is we're going to basically look at the category, and then at that point, if there is a valid category in it, we're gonna just end it. And so what it will do is basically it's saying this is a new category, and we're going to start to track all the suppliers that are in this category. Okay, and so what that's going to do is after it does that, like it's going to go to the first row, find that supplier in that category, and it's going to say, okay, new category, and then it's going to end. And what it's going to do at the bottom here is it's going to go to the next I. What that means is it's going to go from I2 to I3, so now we're on the third row. Same thing again, okay? It's going to look at that supplier at row 3 and do the same thing. Now if it's the same category, and this is what this category is saying is if it's a new category, then okay, do the same thing. Store a new category and get ready to track it. But if it's the same category as what already exists, then it skips that and it runs this, which basically just tells it change the increment. Now we've got another supplier in this category. It should go from 1 to 2. Okay, so that's what that's doing. So basically this is counting, going through row by row. It's pulling the category if it doesn't exist, and if it does exist, it's increasing the increment. So this is exactly what is creating that, what we saw, how many suppliers are in each row. And if you notice earlier, it ran in a matter of seconds. So, within Excel, you can run thousands of lines pretty quickly. You can run tens of thousands of lines pretty quickly. In my experience, once you get into like hundreds of thousands of lines, it starts to slow down. And at that point, maybe you don't want to use Excel anymore. There are other programs like Python or RStudio or others as well that you can use that are more code-based, a little bit more advanced, but they deal with big data sets. Excel kind of starts to slow down after a while. And how you do your code matters too, because as you can see, if you're doing a lot of loops every time, that slows things down. So these are things that you'll just learn over time as you go. So, but again, start simple. Yeah, I think what this is doing is basically just organizing the data. So essentially it's saying, all of our suppliers and categories, we're going to take that and we're going to reorganize it, and we're sorting it alphabetically, I guess, in this one. And then we are going to, this is that summary screen at top that we saw. So if we go back to our supplier management tool and look at this is what's actually generating this part of the new file versus just copying everything over. Essentially what it's doing is it's taking, it's putting that data in there. So actually first what it's doing is it's just setting the text so you can see like here's what's coming. And then in this part is where it's actually putting in the data of how many suppliers and then flagging it like, if it's less than 3, flag it yellow. And then what we're going to do is essentially just copy over the data. So again, I mean, what we're using is a lot of for loops to like go through each row by row, pull the data, do what we want with it, and then put it how we want to put it in here. So that's what this does. Now, one thing I'm noticing here that I want to mention, this command that you almost always want to put in to every macro that you create is the following. So what you want to do is you need to put it at the beginning and you need to put it at the end. So before, you can do it after you dimension everything, but before you actually start making modifications on cells or doing anything else, you want to put this line of code. For the application, make screen updating false. And essentially what that does is it stops Excel from showing you the updates as they happen, because what Excel will do is it will literally make the changes visibly in front of you, not just do the changes, but show you what it's doing. So like in our case, it's doing it so quickly it's hard to notice. But if you're running tens of thousands of code, it's super annoying because it will slow down. You'll actually see it. So it will take time to actually show you it, you know, adding the sheet 2, putting that data in, you know, modifying the data and counting it. It'll show every step. Sometimes that might be useful. For the most part, you don't want to see it. You just want to see the output. Like you just want to see the finished product. And the way to do that is by doing this. You say screen updating false. What that means is that essentially Excel stops for a second, it stops showing you updates. It runs the code in the background, and then at the end here, right before the end sub, you put it in again, but this time you set it back to true. So now it is going to update again. And that's key because otherwise your Excel file won't update anymore, no matter what you do. But you put that back in. So now for just this code, when it executes, Excel will not update. So this is a huge time saver because if you're running tens of thousands of lines of code, now it won't waste time showing you. It'll just do it in the background and then show you the finished product. That saves a ton of time actually. It makes things run much faster. So, you know, maybe you want to do it to verify, to see things if you've got a small data set at first, but I almost always just look at the end result, and then if there are problems, then I might troubleshoot from there. But especially once you've got it ironed out, you want to add that in.